It's time for the double stop with Brian Sword.
Welcome to the Double Stop. I'm Brian Sword. This week, I have bassist Barry Sparks on the show. Well, he's mainly known as a bassist, but he's also a heck of a guitar player too. He has a new record called Riot On Mars, where he plays everything except drums, and it's definitely worth checking out. We're going to talk all about that record, but we're also going to do his whole career too. We talk about his time with Yngwie, Michael Schenker, Dokken, Ted Nugent, and the Bees, plus all his other solo projects. He also talks about his brush with Ritchie Blackmore and Blackmore Tonight, so there's lots to cover. So let's get right to it. Here is my conversation with Barry Sparks.
I'm from Tucson, Arizona. For musical family, I don't really think I'm from such a musical family. My grandmother, I can remember when I was a kid, my grandmother strumming guitar with me. I'd follow her on some of the chords, and my mom sang quite a bit, but mainly it was growing up in the 70s and Kiss and Aerosmith and all these bands. Mainly Kiss came out, and I was a total Kiss freak in the Kiss Army, the whole deal. And me and my brothers and some friends, we're going to play guitar, we're going to play Kiss. So that was like a million other people. In the 70s, Kiss was sort of like the Beatles, Ed Sullivan influence from the 60s. So, I think everyone started playing because of Kiss back in those days.
It's amazing how often that's exactly the influence that people say.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's either the Kiss or the Beatles. It's Kiss or the Beatles. It's the two things that musicians, of our generation started with.
Yeah, well, when I started around 78. I must have been 9 or 10 anyways, and my brother started playing guitar too. He's 2 years older than me, and we played guitar. My sisters had a friend from school came over, and he knew songs. He knew Zeppelin, all this stuff, So it was really neat for me. I'd watch his band practice, and he had a Gibson Les Paul. He was like a full-on rock star to me at that age, So I learned a lot from those guys. And a few years later, my brother was going to get a band with his buddy at school, and just not wanting to be left out, I picked up the bass, and I remember thinking, that guy in Rush is really good. Bass is a cool instrument, So then, from then on out, I was just a total bass freak and would practice all the time. And I'd spend hours and hours and hours, 6 to 8 hours a day, every day practicing bass when I was 12 years old. So lots of stuff like Rush and Iron Maiden, all that stuff.
And in terms of your early bands, when did you start gigging?
Started gigging, in high school. We used to play a lot of house parties. Back in those days, somehow kids got away with having house parties. So we would play a lot of those kind of gigs. And then I must have been 20, maybe 19, 20, I guess, because I moved to LA, and I started playing tons of gigs out there, and bar bands and different things like that. I played with just anything I could get, into, cover bands, original bands, playing the Whiskey, all those kind of places. And eventually I started, getting better gigs where there were, they either had a deal or their labels were looking at them and stuff like that. And eventually it led to Yngwie. Sort of, so it's just about getting out there and playing. I was playing all the time.
Before we get to Yngwie, when you started playing bass, you said you played it a ton. Now, were you self-taught at that point, or did you take a bunch of lessons? How did that go?
Pretty much. I did take lessons for a while, but it was mainly like songs. As far as bass goes, I pretty much just put on. There's a few records that I put on that I just wore out. Tigers of Pantang, Spellbound. I played that record. I would just play along with it. Iron Maiden, Killers, Number of the Beast, those sort of things. I knew them note for note. And looking back, wow, I was a good player. I was a good player by the time I was, 14, 15. I could play any of that stuff. I probably didn't realize at the time, but it was sort of rare back then to for bass players. Anyways, I had a few buddies that were doing that too, but the fact that I started playing bass really served me well because there were so many other guitar players, and to find a bass player that could play, wow, so it really opened a lot of doors for me.
And were you also learning guitar at the same time, or at that point was it really just on bass?
Yeah, I always played guitar, and I always kept playing guitar too. But the funny thing for me in guitar is that bass is such a physical instrument that I can, I have to practice bass every day. I that's one of the things that I do. I practice for how many hours I can squeeze into the day. With guitar, I can pick up the guitar as long as I've been playing bass. I can still play well, So it's I've always kept that. I've always played guitar too, and I played. I play guitar with Michael Schenker and other things too. So yeah, it's helped my bass playing because knowing chord structure and stuff like that, it really has helped. One helps the other.
And you think that influences some of your note choices on bass then?
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Just knowing what the guitar player is playing and knowing what fits with it. And like I said, when I started playing with Yngwie, a lot of those fast riffs, I'd play along with him. But just having the knowledge of the guitar, know what chord you're, key and stuff like that, it really helps.
Now let's talk about how you got the gig with Yngwie. How did that come about?
You know what? I was playing with a guy. I started playing with a guy named Guy Man Dude, who had he is a kind of a shred guitar player. He had a deal with the MCA, and we actually went and toured. My first tour that I did was in Czechoslovakia around '92, and that was amazing for me too because I'd never been to Europe or nothing. So we went there and. We were practicing in L.A. It was a really cool band. It was really tight, three-piece thrash band. It was good. I mean, so we would rehearse in L.A. and a guy named Mike Tirana, the drummer, was playing with Tony McAlpine. Was somehow there or something, and had thought of getting me the gig with Tony. And that never happened, but I started working with him on other stuff with Jeff Scott Soto and some demo stuff. And eventually, Mike started playing with Yngwie, and he did an album called The Seventh Sign. And as they were recording it, he kept calling me, dude, Yngwie needs a bass player. I'm like, dude, tell me. So I auditioned with a cassette tape of me jamming on the bass, kind of like. That's what he said he really wanted to hear, and I got the gig like that. But the crazy thing was my first gig. There was no rehearsal. It was a Fender 40th anniversary party at the NAMM show, and it was just kind of like, meet me there, we're going to play. So there was quite a bit of pressure, but I pulled that off, and then I joined the band and. We went to Miami and rehearsed, and a month later I was playing Budokan in Japan with him. So it was an awesome time. It was really cool.
Well, not only are you playing with him for the first time without really much rehearsal, but you're playing in front of a bunch of guitar players with their arms folded, watching you.
Oh, there was tons of guitar. Buddy Guy, there's Robin Ford. There was tons of people. And on top of that, it was my audition, too. The funny thing was, about a week before the gig, I talked to Yngwie on the phone. He said, okay, here's a set list. Then do these songs. Okay, so within those few days, I went crazy and learned everything. And, some of the songs are pretty challenging. And then the night before the gig, I briefly met him, and we got together, and he goes, okay, so what are we going to play? And I'm like, we're going to play. We went through this. He told me the set list, all right? I'm thinking, that's set list, right? So he throws all these extra songs in it. So then I had a matter of just a few hours to learn all these other songs. So I can remember driving to the gig going, that sound, I think it's C sharp, I think, or whatever it was, So it was definitely a high pressure audition. But when I pulled it off, it was a big relief, because it was just like, okay, now we're getting your flight tickets to Florida, we're going to start the tour, and it was like, okay, I'm in.
And you think that was like a test, or was it just that he just did that?
I guess it might have been a test. It was just the way it was. I mean, he was flying in from Florida. There was no time. There was just it's a little bit of both, probably. I guess if it didn't work out, they would have, they must have had somebody else that they would have tried to, to get. But luckily, I pulled it off. But yeah, it was a great time. It was an awesome time playing with him.
And it was an interesting time as well in the musical landscape. Like, you joined right in, 93, 94?
It's funny. I look at it now, it's funny because, yeah, at that time it was like, oh my gosh, because I had, really long hair, and it was like, oh my God, you're one of those guys, but at the same time, Yngwie was a legendary guitar player. It was amazing. And it was music that I liked, it was music I understood, and, I liked what was coming out. I liked Soundgarden. I liked all that stuff, but I wasn't one of those guys who just jumped on the bandwagon and oh no, I'm grunge. It wasn't that kind of thing. What's funny now is, all these years later, things have kind of turned, and he's probably doing better than ever. He's kind of went full circle, where he's kind of the king of the guitar hero thing anyways. So, but at the time, it was a tough time for Yngwie, except for Japan. It was his best years in Japan were the several years I was with him. So we did big tours there. So it was amazing.
Now tell me about doing these huge tours in Japan, and then you're coming home, and nobody has a clue.
Well,
because you're not,
Well, the funny thing, the funny thing with Yngwie was, and keep in mind that we were doing well. We would play rock clubs,
sure,
House of Blues, and there were some so great gigs, but there were a lot of great gigs. And back in those days, all the rock bands that we consider rock, all those bands were playing clubs. That was what it was. And the funny thing was, every tour we did, of course, Japan was that was the great place to go, because we were playing theaters, we were playing Budokan, we were playing, big places. And then you would come back and fly in. I remember we flew from Japan to actually, Washington, Evergreen, Washington. I remember coming, and it was, after spending a month in Japan, all of a sudden you're at some smaller club. But again, it was a great time, and I was stoked, and I had a great time playing with Yngwie.
And being young, and your first, I guess, Guy Band Dude was a legitimate band in touring, but your first pretty big band.
Yeah, Yngwie was definitely the first legitimate thing where, I remember just seeing the tour bus pull up and go, oh no way, we got to sleep on that.
And to go from playing clubs, then all of a sudden you go to Japan and you're playing these huge rooms. How was that for you?
That was great. It's funny because I've always felt like, even with other bands, cover bands to Guy Man Dude, to whatever I was doing, I've always felt when I was playing, it was sort of my office. It was like, I belong here. This is perfect. So when I started playing with Yngwie, I did have quite a bit of confidence, I think, even though I hadn't done a whole lot. I knew I could play, and I knew I could handle it, and I knew I could do it. So, a lot of it was just so exciting at the time because, I had seen Yngwie and Talus opening for Yngwie when I was in high school, and I was a fan. I knew all this stuff, so it was great.
He's a big personality. What was it like to be in a band with him?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's, I mainly had a great time. Yeah, he wasn't the easiest person to get along with because I was the bass player, and he played a lot of the bass on a lot of his records, and it was, the keyboard player was sort of, not any way in his way or something, but I would say, but for the most part, I never really had too many problems with anything. I mean, I'm a pretty easygoing guy. That helped a lot, but he was drinking a lot of in those days, which he's cleaned up a lot since then. But like I said, really, people always ask, "What is he like? What is he like?" Yeah, there are moments, but he's an amazing guitar player, and for the most part of it, I had a great experience.
And after you finished the tour, you did record with him, right? Or did he do his own bass playing?
Yeah, we did. We went right into the studio pretty much and did Magnum Opus, and we did that album and then went right. For those several years, we were pretty much touring all the time, and we did the record right back out and toured. So it was constant working, which is great. I think we finished that second tour, and I came back after Christmas, and I think the manager said he was going to take some time off. He was doing a cover record. So we I had talked to Michael Schenker before he put UFO together and did the Walk on Water record. And so that came up again for Michael Schenker Group, and I wasn't really doing anything with Yngwie, so of course I just started doing that.
And he's another interesting dude. He's a little quirky, I think.
Well, you know what? Michael Schenker, even to this day, Michael Schenker is my favorite guitar player. But growing up, Michael Schenker was it for me. So I was just totally stoked. I mean, to play with Yngwie was amazing, and to play with Michael Schenker was amazing too, because I knew all that music, and just the way he soloed, he was just, he's like a sort of Jeff Beckish kind of one-of-a-kind guy, and we did a great record, and I'm still proud of, called Written in the Sand, with a great singer from Sweden, Leif Sundin. He was really, really great. The record came out great. Ron Nevison produced it. And then there were some problems with the singer's visa from Sweden. So then kind of a new lineup came out, which was still great. We did a lot of stuff. We did several, I don't even know, 96 to 98 maybe I was playing with that lineup. So we did lots of stuff. But I love playing with Michael. It was just amazing because some nights when he's just on fire, which was usually every night, you just had to smile because his tone, his playing, it was just, what I love about hard rock was like, Into the Arena, all that Michael Schenker stuff. So it was great. It was great.
From working with two such legendary guitar players, how did you approach playing with them differently?
You know what? I've been asked that before. I don't know that I ever approach anything different. I pretty much do. I pretty much just do my thing. I mean, I'm a real big believer in a feel of something, and I know, theory and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, it's really just a feel thing. I'm just kind of still doing the same thing I did when I was 14, 15 years old, playing along with records and stuff. I mean, you just kind of, like I said, I just feel what's right, but I don't know that I approached it any different. One thing being that it's sort of the same music, basically the same music. And what I've always wanted to do, because I've always loved fusion and stuff like that, Stanley Clarke, I love that stuff, but I always felt that I want to be the best rock bass player I can be. You know, I want to be that. You know, I love Geezer Butler, Steve Harris, Geddy Lee, you know, these guys, Chris Squire, and all that, this kind of players. So that was kind of my thing. When I go to the studio, I always try to think of the song first, and of course, I want to strut my stuff too if I can. But basically, it's like I said, a feel thing.
And what led you to move on from Michael Schenker?
I think we finished a tour. You know what? I had met a guy who put a lot of bands together for pop, you know, the pop music sort of stuff, you know, in L.A., and he would call me for auditions. And I remember trying out for Randy Bachman's son, Cal Bachman. He had a hit in the 90s. And I really wanted to do it. He had a good record, and it was new stuff. I thought, wow, this is going to be really cool. And I remember trying out for several of them, and I finally gave in and I chopped the hair off. I'm like, okay, fine, let's do it. I'm going to get one of these big pop gigs. I want to do it, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up getting a gig with a girl named Billie Myers, who had a hit song called Kiss the Rain. And we played everywhere. Jay Leno, Rosie O'Donnell. We did tours all over the place, and opened up for Bob Dylan. We you know, toured with Savage Garden. It was a totally different thing, you know.
Savage Garden, amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So underneath it all, it was kind of funny because I'm just going, I really, you know, I kind of snickering when I'm a rock guy, you know, but this is fun. No, but it was a great experience too. It was awesome. Now that one I approached differently, I think, because I had to, because it was kind of like, you know, I couldn't. It was more simple stuff, and it was definitely a different kind of thing. But it was a great experience, and I had a great time doing it. It was fun. It was fun doing something where it was, you know, it was current. It was on the, you know, VH1 at the time, and so it was cool. And I remember I couldn't do an MSG tour, the G3 tour, I think it was, in Europe or something. And I really wanted to do it, but I was out doing this. But I did, after this Billie Myers thing, I went and played several more tours, I think, with Michael Schenker after that. So, you know, after that, the hair started growing back. Billie Myers, it was a great experience. It was really cool. But on the other hand, it did, with no negative, you know, vibe towards that thing. But once I started doing that stuff, we would, you know, and I remember playing with Hanson. I remember playing with
Oh, wow.
tons of bands. I was going, this is cool, but man, I'd rather be playing with Michael Schenker Group in a club and playing, you know, Are You Ready to Rock? It's just me. This isn't me. So after that, I didn't really care so much, and I started playing with Michael Schenker again. I played with Uli John Ross, and we did some stuff, and, you know, and that, it wasn't too long before I started playing with Dokken.
What came first then, the Glimmer of Hope or Dokken?
You know what? Glimmer of Hope, with Michael Schenker, I played quite a bit of acoustic guitar on his acoustic stuff. And that whole acoustic CD that I did was my blatant influence from Michael Schenker, including the title, Glimmer of Hope, because he had Positive Forward, he had all this stuff, and it was just a nice, silly take on that. And there was no hiding it. It was a pure, total Michael Schenker influenced thing. I did my own thing on it, but the whole idea and everything, I have to give credit. It was Michael Schenker. Yeah.
I can't think of any bass player who was strictly known as a bass player who turned around and did a solo acoustic instrumental guitar album with no bass. You know, a pure.
Well, you know, there is one reason for that being. At the time, it was before, I mean, I guess there was Pro Tools and there was digital recording, but the computer thing back in the late 90s, it wasn't really taken off yet, and I didn't have the knowledge on it. We were using these machines called ADAT tapes. They were digital tapes with VHS sort of tapes in them, and I didn't have, I had an 8-track studio with it. So I knew that I could pull off a good sounding 8-track sort of acoustic record with no drums, and, you know, and that led me to, and I thought, you know what, this could be really cool. I've been doing this with Michael anyways. There's no bass on it, but let me see what I come up with. So I did a few songs, and it worked out really cool. So that was kind of the reason, but mainly, Michael Schenker's CD only had acoustic guitars on it, and like I said, I wasn't hiding. I was going, hey, thanks, Michael, for the idea. I'm only walking in your footsteps. So that's how that came out.
I love the guitar tone in it. I think it sounds great.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I think I just got lucky because it was one of the first things I'd really done, so I like that. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot about recording just from doing that, and it helped me later when I started getting into, doing full, bass and drums and everything else,
And it's a pretty thick wall of guitar too. There's a lot happening.
Yeah, you know what? I hadn't heard it for a long time. I recently listened to a little bit of it, and I was like, wow, this sounds great. Wow, okay, wow. And it's been, since like '99, 15 years or something. So wow, yeah, it sounds pretty cool. I'm pretty proud of it still.
It was funny because when I listened to it, I was expecting like singer-songwriter. Oh, he's doing a singer-songwriter acoustic album. Okay. And then I started going like, oh no, this is very different than that.
Yeah, well, you know what I did with that? There was a song called Bijou Pleasurette, a Michael Schenker song, and I loved how there was a lot of chops in it on the acoustic, and we just, we play it, and there was a lot of shredding on it, but really it was just this nice melodic, little orchestra of pieces, all working together. So I tried to take that, and I'm going to make melodies and harmonies anywhere I can put them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the idea came from. So I took it pretty far. I think a lot of the bed behind the lead is just some little harmony line going around. So it's real melodic. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now for Dokken, that was an interesting time to join the band because they'd recovered well from the experience with Lynch, which for Shadow Life, and they had to erase the slate, and everybody loved it for the fans. They kind of re-won the fans, and then half the band left.
Yeah, what's funny about that is because I remember being in my car, this must have been a year or two before then, I remember hearing the Maddest Hatter, the radio, and I'm going, this is killer, this is great, wow, I love this. It sounded amazing, I loved it. Let's see, I played Sweden Rock Festival with Yngwie, and I remember Mick Brown walking by our bus. He goes, "Oh, I remember thinking, oh, that's Mick Brown from Dokken. Oh, cool." And I went up and started talking to him. Hey, nice to meet you. And I'm playing with Yngwie. He goes, "Wow, I want to meet Yngwie." So I took him on the bus and we met Yngwie. And really, that had nothing to do with my joining Dokken. What had happened was John Norum had started working with Don and everything. John's a great player who I had known from Yngwie. He's Swedish too, and I had met him, and he asked me to play on one of his solo records back in the early 90s. And John really liked my playing, and I, as far as I understand, he brought me up and said, "Oh, you got to get Barry. So my meeting Mick had nothing to do with it. So yeah, I don't remember who called me, but I was stoked. I always loved Dokken too, and so yeah, we put that record together, Long Way Home. It was a strange time for that whole scene, I think. But again, we went out and toured, did tons of stuff, tons of clubs, and just being on the road for me, that was what I wanted to do, and to be playing straight ahead rock like that was a blast too, because at the time I'd been doing also a lot of records for Shrapnel with Mike Varney, which were great. I loved them, but it was like they're really challenging stuff, it was like, and so I was going, wow, it'd be nice to play something straight ahead, just get out and rock too, So when that came out, I was stoked. It was great. So yeah, like I said, we played everywhere, and we toured with Dokken, Whitesnake, and Scorpions, which is definitely a highlight. I love that. Oh, which led me getting calls from Scorpions too. But I might be getting ahead of myself. So anyways, Dokken, we did Long Way Home, and let's see, we were on tour, And I remember Marco Mendoza pulling me aside, going, hey, do you want to play with Ted Nugent this summer? And I'm going, yeah, hello, of course I do. So Marco had been playing with Ted, and he was out with Whitesnake and couldn't do it, and I was real flattered he thought of me, and I said, yeah, sure, So I was touring with Dokken, playing every night, and I would hop on my bunk on the bus about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I would be learning Ted songs, which of course I knew a bunch of them from being a kid, but learning his set. So I would stay up and down with 3 or 4 in the morning, just bouncing around the bus, learning songs on my bunk and listening to all the songs. So when I met Ted finally, we went to his house in Jacksonville, and we jammed in his sort of warehouse he had set up, and man, I was on fire. I knew every single thing. We nailed everything straight through. So I was really happy with that. Because I knew, it was Ted Nugent, I gotta go in there and know my stuff,
He'll have no patience for you if you don't.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that band was killer with Tommy Clufetos, who's now with Ozzy and Black Sabbath. That kid is such an amazing drummer. We just hit it off. We played so well with Ted. To this day, I think that must have been one of Ted's best lineups, I'm sure. But it was just a really good band. So in between that, I was still playing with Dokken, and it was sort of a tough thing because it did put Don in a bad position because he had to get somebody. But we weren't doing a whole lot, so it's kind of like, well, I got to do something, So he was nice enough to get someone to fill in for me for a long time. I got to say that, because I did go out with Ted for almost 5 years every year, and I still play with Dokken all that time too. And I eventually got Mick Brown the gig with Ted too, and it was, to be honest, I got tired of all the pressure on me because when I would leave, I thought, well, I'll take Mick with me, and it won't just be me. Mick's here too.
Oh, fuck.
Get mad at him too because Mick's here. So that, so Mick started playing. We did several other tours, and Ted's amazing. I love Ted. Ted's a great guy. He's totally a madman, but in a good way. I learned a lot from him, and he's an awesome person. Put all the crazy, even if you don't agree with him politically or whatever. Put it this way: I did a tour with Tommy Aldridge playing drums with Ted, and Tommy Aldridge is a vegetarian, and that worked fine. So that says a lot for Ted actually being a cool dude. So he's a great guy,
And now I think Mick is the longest serving band member that Ted's ever had.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Well, you know what? What happened? I got to interject this too. I kind of missed this whole thing in there because I started playing with I did a tour with Bees in 2003. That was one of the craziest, busiest years because I was out with Dokken. I did a tour with Ted, out with Dokken again. And between that, I got a call from my friend Shane, who had played drums with forever and all these bands. And he said, "Oh, we should try out for this band, Bees. They're huge, Okay, sure, Let's see what happens." And I tried out, and so did Billy Sheehan. And Billy, of course, is a huge star in Japan and everything. And he ended up doing the 2001 tour. And then after that, I think I did the next tour or after that or something. So I did a tour in Japan and we did the LA House of Blues United States tour with Bees, and I was in LA rehearsing with Bees, and Rudolf Schenker calls me, hey Barry, it's Rudolph from Scorpions. We need you to come to Germany to finish a record with us. And I was like, yeah, this is amazing. And I was like, well, there's only one problem. I'm in the middle of this, but I got these this week or so. So I flew to Germany and recorded a bunch of songs with Scorpions. And at the time, they had Ralph in the band, and there was a kind of a weird thing going on there where when I recorded with them, I thought, well, am I going to get credit for this? Or is it going to say Ralph? I didn't know. I didn't care. But at the time, it came down to, at one point, it was like, oh, you got the gig, dude. You got the gig. You know, James Totak is helping me through all this and everything. I was like, oh, this is amazing. But I had a big tour at Bees, and I couldn't just, you know, it was we were playing Tokyo Dome for 50,000 people and big stuff, you know, and I love Bees too. So it was a sort of a bad thing and a good thing, you know. It was just the timing thing. So anyways, I did a bunch of songs with Scorpions. Several of them ended up on the album, like the single, what was it, Love 'Em or Leave 'Em? That one was from Unbreakable album, and another song, but there were several other ones that we did, and then did the tour with Bees. So in the meantime, that's when the other guy came and finished a lot of it, and so I didn't end up doing anything after that. But working back to Ted, I started playing with Bees again. And I was it was a timing thing. With any of these bands, I don't look back and really don't know that you know, nothing bad ever happened where it was like, oh, I don't want to talk to that guy or nothing like that. It was just a timing thing where it's like, oh my gosh, you're calling me now. And I'm like, I'm in the middle of this, you know. I thought we weren't doing anything. So anyways, the thing with Ted Nugent, that was, you know, because I have nothing but love for Ted. He's amazing. We did the Love Grenade album, and yeah, Ted's awesome.
There's a lot there. And then also at that time, I guess you mentioned the Shrapnel stuff because you did work with Tony McAlpine as well, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. I did a record with Tony McAlpine with Steve Smith from Journey drummer, playing drums on it, which is an amazing drummer. And I did all those bass tracks at home, and Tony's music's very complex, and they sent me the tracks, I recorded it, and I sent it back to them, and my tape is arriving the day of mixing. So it was a little high pressure because I thought, well, what if something's not gelling right or something, you know? And I was really happy, and they called me and said, oh, it sounds great, we're done mixing. No, it's awesome. So, really? Okay. Killer. So, yeah, I did quite a few records. I was really busy that, you know, 4 or 5 years around the late 90s to the, you know, 2006 or something like that. It was pretty crazy, yeah.
For the Ted Nugent Love Grenade album, in terms of the writing and the recording, were you guys all in the studio, or was that another time where you just did your parts remotely?
You know, we did a bunch of jamming, I'll call it, at his ranch in Waco, Texas. We had a couple songs that we've been playing live, and we had a lot of it worked out. But the thing with Ted, which is really cool, is you get in there and you just bang it out. You just play. And that made a really cool record because it's really a live feel. And so I think most of it was probably written, but you know, we tweaked a little bit here and there, and it was a really fast, fun recording. His
persona has gotten so huge, I think people forget just what a cool guitar player he is.
That's always what I used to think, too, man, because I was thinking, man, this guy's a great guitar player, and you guys are forgetting he's a guitar player, too. You know, so, yeah, he's a killer guitar. What he does, it's that, you know, high-energy Chuck Berry hard rock. He's great. I don't know if there's anyone better than him.
With the Dokken records that you did, you know, you did 3 studio records. Again, was it a similar thing? Was it a collaborative process, or did you just do your bass parts and split?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, with Hell to Pay, I wrote a song on there. There was a couple songs. One of them, somehow it didn't get recorded right or something. I remember something got funky with it, and I was kind of bummed out it didn't make it on the record. But mainly we pieced them together, and Don, you know, would come in later and tweak it or whatever you want to call it. But so it was pretty much a group effort, I think, yeah.
And working with John Levin, how was that?
John Levin's great. John Levin is a great guitar player. I can't say enough good about John. So that George Lynch style of playing, he's awesome. He was always great. Yeah.
Your last recording with them, that was Lightning Strikes Again, and was that around the time that you were exiting the band? Like, did you finish the recording and
Kind
split?
of. It got kind of weird because I was keeping busy. Oh, within all of this stuff, I was playing with UFO too. So I forgot all about that. Yeah, but during this whole time, yeah, I came back from Bees, and then I did it. Well, I did the Scorpions recordings, and then I came back. I did a tour, American tour with UFO, and I'd be right back on the road with Dokken and all this stuff, and I'd be out with Ted. I'd be doing, yeah, I was busy. Let's see, Lightning Strikes Again. We did that. Let's see, why is that? Let me think here. What happened here? We did that record. I think we did some touring for it, I believe. Basically, in a nutshell, with the Dokken thing, we didn't have a whole lot going on. I would call our road manager. I'd be going, hey, what do we have? We got some shows coming up. We got a couple. Yeah, a couple. I just got I can do a whole tour of UFO. I mean, we can do something here. So, for some reason, around 2009, I'm gonna guess 2010. For some reason, that UFO tour at that time kind of rubbed Don wrong, and kind of ended our sort of relationship at that time. but it really was. It was over just because we weren't doing enough. I mean, we had a show. I remember asking, we have some shows coming. We got one show coming up, and at that time, Sean McNabb from Great White had been filling in for me, and it has been working out great. So. Hey, Sean, can you do one show? Sure, no problem. Okay. So it became a problem for some reason later on. And so, and I loved playing with UFO. We did a bunch of stuff. So it wasn't, like I said, if we had something going, if we were busy and stuff, I wouldn't have done anything, but I was just kind of sitting around going, okay, let's play, So it sort of kind of came down to the schedule, I guess.
And with all those projects and tours, you did another solo record, Can't Look Back.
Yeah, that was a little different. I tried, I guess that was somewhere in between the pop Billy Myers and then trying to do rock. But it was sort of middle-of-the-road stuff. I did sing on it. It was a challenge. I did have a great time doing it, and some people really like it. I mean, a lot of people... They love that. I am proud of it. It was definitely a different thing for me, though. And it was very challenging to do everything. I did every single thing, which is it's quite hard to do in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, at that point, you're looking 2003, 2004. You're
Something
working
like
on that.
Yeah.
In terms of the Pro Tools reality, how far along had things come at that point?
Well, I was, it was kind of, I was using a new window, sort of the same sort of program, and doing a lot of stuff. Like I said, I've always played guitar, and I wanted to try to do something that wasn't, heavy metal, but sort of, some hard rock and something meets Tom Petty at the same time, So that was sort of the thing, and there are a lot of good moments on that record too. I think there's some really cool stuff on there.
And you had Billy Gibbons and Ted Nugent. Like, you're able to call in the buddies,
on
right?
The record. Yes, that's right. That's right. We were touring. I was with Ted Nugent. We were touring with ZZ Top, and I remember recording the record. I did that record. I had a studio that I had. It was sort of like this. It was mounted in a gun case. I had all the foam cut out, and I had the laptop, and I had all just ridiculous setup of cables and everything I had in my hotel room every night.
You had a gun case in your hotel. That's subtle.
Yeah. Actually, in those days, I carried my bass in one of Ted's waterproof guitar gun cases. Yeah, so it worked out well. But I had the whole studio set up on the tour bus. And I remember thought, you know what, just ask him. He can only say no. So I kind of knocked on his dressing door. Hey, Billy, hey, I'm doing this recording, and would you guys, hey, you play a solo for me? I think he's going to tell me no and tell me beat it, kid. And he says, yeah, no problem. And then so, oh, cool. So I took him on the bus, and I had my setup, and he plugged in and did his thing. It was awesome.
It's funny because I've heard Billy Sheehan say a similar thing, because he had one of his solo records, he had Billy Gibbons on it, and he just kind of showed up at his house and grabbed a guitar off the wall, any old thing, and it sounded just like Billy Gibbons, and he banged out a cool solo.
Yeah, that's the thing with Billy Gibbons. He doesn't do anything that doesn't sound like him, for sure. So yeah, in fact, we did a solo thing, and the next day at the next gig, I saw him in the catering room. And he's like, hey, I came up with a part for that piece you have, and oh, cool. So he came up with the whole guitar riff that fit on a different part too. So that we went and did that. So he actually came up with quite a bit of stuff on that particular song.
So that's Breathe, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then with Ted, was it a similar thing? Since you were on tour,
it was easy. Yeah. Hey, Ted, can you play a solo on this? Yeah, no problem. Stuck it on. That was a piece of cake.
So let's move on to the new album, Riot On Mars.
Okay, this is interesting too. With UFO, we were touring in Europe, and several years ago, there was a volcano eruption somewhere in Europe, I forget where, and there was the volcanic cloud that none of the airplanes could fly. I don't know if you remember this. Well, we were in Greece at the time, and I had bought a bouzouki, which is an 8-string sort of mandolin instrument down in Greece. I thought, this is really cool. And this volcano erupted. We couldn't fly back to Germany. We had to take a bus. So it was something like a 36-hour drive nonstop. So we just hopped on the bus, had the bouzouki, and I was just kind of just banging out riffs on this Greek instrument down in the front lounge with Phil Mogg and Andy Parker, and I just come up with a riff, and Phil go, wow, I like that. And, yeah, we need to do that. Let's use that for a song. Okay, cool. So within this trip back, we wrote like 5 songs. And so the basis of this record was really, at one point, going to be half of a UFO record. So, and again, I put a bunch of these songs together. Phil started writing the lyrics to a lot of them, and it was something, I don't remember exactly what happened. We were going to record something. It got pushed back, and suddenly I was in Japan with bees again. I remember being kind of frustrated with the fact that I had been trying to push everybody to go record the record because I knew I had this window of opportunity for this. I was going to be gone, and it didn't happen. And then, so anyways, I had a lot of this stuff just sitting, I'd been working on it for a long time. And I thought, this stuff is too good. I got to do something with it. And this time I thought, I don't want to, I'll do all the music, but I don't want to do this vocals thing. I just want someone else to do it. And the best person I thought of was, Mike Becerra he was amazing. He's an amazing singer. And we've always kept in touch. And so I approached him with the idea of, putting our own band together and using this stuff. And it went really well. The way we worked together was, I knew that his musical interests were the same as mine. I wanted to do something that was just exactly what we wanted to do. I wanted to do something Rainbow Rising, the stuff I love, just without caring about whatever anyone else thought was cool or not cool. So that's why I ended up using a lot of mandolin. I use this bouzouki. I use all sorts of stuff, and it's sort of a 70s hard rock, I guess, influenced record. But again, it's just me honoring my heroes, So I'm really happy how it came out. In fact, that brings up to another thing. In between all that playing I did, speaking of Ritchie Blackmore, when I was with Ted, I auditioned for Blackmore's Night, and
really,
and got the gig. And I met Ritchie Blackmore. They flew me out to Long Island, and Ritchie wants to meet you. So I was like, oh my gosh, Ritchie, he's the top of the hill, isn't he? I love Ritchie. So I met Ritchie, and we hung out in a restaurant playing guitars together, and he goes, yeah, okay, you got the gig, and I was totally stoked. I flew home, and then they go, okay, they want to bring you out again. He wants to hang out with you. Okay. Flew me back out there again. We hung out, and he's amazing player. And this was the terrible thing that happened. I was just finishing up a tour with Ted, and they go, okay, we're going to start rehearsals in Athens, Greece, on such and such a date. I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm looking at the schedule, like, oh my gosh, I got like 3 days until I can be there. I'm finishing up the last shows with Ted. The tour's over. So I told him that, and then I did all I could, but it was like, you know, they didn't really go for it. So I'll show up. I'll know everything better than anybody. Don't worry. But it didn't work out. But it was really a timing thing. The thing with Ritchie, I was blown away with how different he was than I had perceived. And I can only from my brief, you know, time knowing him and stuff, I can only say good things about him. It was great.
And what do you mean by he was so different than you expected?
Well, he was funny and really friendly. I mean, and most people don't think of him being that way. We would play for a little while, and a lot of his thing was okay. Once they figured out I could play, it was like, well, can I hang out with this guy? Let me check him out and stuff. So once he figured that out, we just hung out and chatted all night and had a great time. And he was really cool. I mean, I can't speak of someone who's had a long working relationship with him, and you know, maybe it's different, but I can only say really cool things about him. It was really, really cool. I wish I got to do it.
And now I hear he's gonna come back and play a few rock shows, so that's exciting.
I heard that too. Yes, that's really cool. That's really cool. But back to this, I kind of cut off with the Riot On Mars thing. Yeah, so a lot of that stuff, I wanted to do something where it was like, I don't even care what people think is really cool or not cool. I want to do something like, you know, Stargazer from Rising, and something, you know, some Deep Purple-ish stuff, some Aerosmith-ish stuff, you know. And so I'm really, out of anything I've ever done, I'm the most proud of this record. So, like I said, it's as genuine as I could make it, with no influence from any sort of fad or trend or anything.
It was funny when I listened to it. Like, okay, it's like, okay, you're in the Bees, and you got the singer from Anti-Metal USA, and I'm like, so I thought I knew what I was gonna get, and the first two songs kind of gave me what I thought I was gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
And then it switched. You know, I think it was song 3, maybe 4, but it switched, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh wait, that's more like Zeppelin or something else. Like, it became very, very 70s Deep Purple Zeppelin, and yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. I really liked it.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff, like I said, was a lot of those riffs were actually written on that bouzouki coming back from Greece, and it does have a Zeppelin-y kind of thing. I think the mandolin, once I kind of got into this thing, I was like, wow, this is sort of a thing on this record. So almost every song has some sort of mandolin-ish kind of thing mixed with this kind of hard rock vibe. I wanted it to be, I knew working with Mike that it would be melodic, because I love bands like Journey too, and I wanted something that people can like to sing along with too, and I knew working with Mike would be that. So I'm really happy with how it came out.
And there's a ton of guitar on there. Did you play it all yourself?
Every instrument on this record, except the drums. But everything, minus a keyboard solo on a song called Consequences, which is a keyboard player from Bees. Yeah, I played everything. Like I said, I've always played guitar. You know, I've done gigs as a guitar player. I've played with Billy Myers as a guitarist. So most people don't know that side of me. But I'm influenced by Michael Schenker. I play stuff like that. I like melodic leads, but that's what I kind of added to it. And it wasn't that I didn't want to work with somebody else. It was really just that how it ended up. I was like, well, I know what I want this to be like. I kind of knew it. So with this in mind, it could be that the next Riot On Mars record is going to be, you know, it could have some other players on it. You know, it could be different. but at this point, it's music by Barry Sparks and vocals by Michael Schenker. And my thing was, well, Steely Dan was only two guys. So my point was I wanted to build something that, because I started out going, okay, Sparks was there project or something like that, and I thought, this isn't. It's more important than that. You know what I mean? So I wanted to give legs to something that I can keep doing. So, like I said, I think in the next one, the other members will be put together differently. But I think in this particular case, it came out. I couldn't be more happy with how it came out. Like I said, I like it's all my influences. In fact, the instrumental, it's got a lot of Rush influence. It was definitely a big influence on me too. So yeah, like I said, it's the most. I'm the most proud of this than I guess anything I've done.
And how has the response been?
It's been really, really good so far. It came out in Japan in March or April. And we did a lot of in-store autograph signings in Japan, and it sold very well, actually, in today's world of selling actual product. I've just now put the first download available on riotonmars.com, and I'll do more later, but right now it's mainly been a Japan release at this point until I'm working on it now. But the reaction's been great. I mean, I think it's been really good.
And for the rest of the world, is there a point in getting a label for the rest of it when you can so easily put it out yourself?
Well,
what would you like to do with it?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of weeding through that now. I mean, I wanted to release it on iTunes and everything, which I probably will, but I thought, you know what, put it on our site first, and we'll see what we do. We're on Facebook and trying to build that and trying to get, it's a new thing. So, but I didn't want to push Facebook as my own page. I wanted to say, push us as me and Mike, it's our band, and which it is, and we're trying to, like I said, I'm trying to build something with some longer life to it than like a simple Sparks of Basera project or something like that, which doesn't really. I want it to be a band. And
do you think you guys will be able to do any shows then?
Yeah, I'm thinking of ideas for that too. It'll take a little while to get to that point, but I'm working on it.
Opening up for the bees.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. Yeah, so we're just doing what we can. I'm working on music all the time and trying to get the word out on this. Like I said, it came out killer, and Mike is such a talented singer. I mean, he can sing anything, and it was just so nice working with him. Where I'd give him something like, oh, he's in the coffin, and it'd just be something. It's like, oh, cool, perfect, okay. There was no. Nothing. There was no arguments, none of that. It was just like, that's great.
And that was Barry Sparks. I hope you enjoyed it. This is episode 76 of the show, so if you want to check out the archives, go to thedoublestop.com to check out all the past episodes. I just rebuilt the site after a WordPress update pretty much devastated my old theme, which, to be fair, was a few years old, but it was a disaster. So check it out, it is much improved. Also, one of the things that died was the contact form. It seemed to be working, but it wasn't. So anyone who emailed me through the contact form on the site, please send it again, as I went a couple weeks without receiving anything. It's working again now, and all is good. So that's it for this week. Until next week, I'm Brian Sword. Thanks again for listening to The Double Stop.